Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about human rights and government policy.
Aujourd'hui, je veux aussi parler des mesures qu'on prend pour protéger les Canadiens.
I also want to talk about what's being done to protect Canadians from the scourge of gun violence.
Dans certaines de nos villes, les
In some of our
crimes impliquant
cities,
des armes à feu sont à la hausse.
gun crimes are on the
C'est
rise.
inacceptable.
This is
Personne ne
unacceptable.
devrait avoir peur d'être victime
No one should be
d'un
afraid of
tireur
being a
de
victim
masse
of a
ou d'une
sniper
balle perdue.
or a stray bullet.
En tant que parent, je sais très bien
As
que
a
notre plus
parent,
grande peur,
I know
c'est de
full well that our
recevoir
greatest
un appel
fear is
tragique
receiving a tragic
nous
call
informant que le pire
telling
est
us
arrivé.
that the worst
Dans
has
un pays
happened.
comme le Canada, être victime
In a country
d'être
like
à la
Canada, being a
mauvaise place au
victim
mauvais
of being
moment
in the wrong place at the
devrait
wrong
jamais
time
arriver.
should never
Pas au
happen.
parc, pas à la mosquée,
Not
pas à
at the
l'école,
park, not at the mosque,
pas
not
nulle
at
part
school,
ailleurs.
not anywhere else.
L'année dernière, pour combattre la violence
year,
liée aux armes à feu,
To
on a
combat gun
banni
violence,
plus de 1500 modèles
we banned
d'armes
more than
d'assaut
1,500
tels
assault
que
weapon
promis.
models as promised.
Ces armes sont des outils qui ont été conçus
These weapons are tools that have been
spécifiquement pour tuer
specifically
le plus de
designed to
gens
kill as many
possible,
people
le
as
plus
possible,
rapidement
as
possible.
quickly as possible,
Et elles n'ont pas leur place
and they
dans
have
la
no
société.
place in our society.
On a aussi promis de présenter un projet de loi fidèle au reste
We
de
also
nos
promised to
engagements
introduce
sur la question.
legislation that would
Et c'est
deliver
exactement
on the rest of
ce
our
qu'on fait
commitments, and
aujourd'hui.
that is exactly what we're doing
In
today.
2019, firearms were used in 40% of all homicides in Canada. When it comes to keeping Canadians safe from gun violence, we need more than thoughts and prayers. We need concrete action. In 2019, we passed legislation to keep firearms out of the wrong hands, including by expanding background checks. Last year, we banned over 1,500 models of military-style assault weapons. And today, we're announcing new legislation for stronger measures than ever before to combat gun violence in Canada. Banning 1,500 models of assault-style weapons last year was a critical step, but we also need to continue to fight the illegal gun market. That's why we will increase criminal penalties for gun smuggling and trafficking and enhance the capacity of police and border officials to keep illegal firearms out of the country. At the same time, we will also create new offenses for altering the cartridge magazine of a firearm and introduce tighter restrictions on importing ammunition. Canadians called for these bold steps. We heard you, and we are taking action. To make sure that these assault-style weapons are safely removed from our communities, we've studied a range of options. We looked at what our allies are doing, including New Zealand. We saw what works and what doesn't, all while taking into account the realities here at home. And from this, we've charted a plan of action. We will move forward with a buyback program in the coming months and complete the prohibition to ensure these weapons cannot be legally used, transferred, transported, bequeathed, or sold. Getting these weapons off our streets and out of the hands of criminals means less violence. And that means safer cities and communities. Every measure we're presenting today in Bill C-21 is important, and they all work together as part of a larger strategy. Because you can't fight gun violence or any violence on just one front. And you can't fight it without addressing its root causes. Il y a encore beaucoup trop de victimes de violences
There are still far
conjugales
too many
et de
victims of
violences fondées sur
spousal
le
and
sexe
gender-based
dans notre
violence
pays.
in our country.
8 sur 10 victimes de violences
8
conjugales
out of 10
sont des
victims
femmes.
of spousal
La
abuse are
présence
women.
d'armes à feu à la maison peut mettre
The
des
presence
vies
of firearms
en
in
danger.
the home can put lives
On va
at
donc
risk.
proposer des lois qui
Therefore,
permettront aux amis et aux proches qui
Will also be
s'inquiètent
proposed
d'une
to allow
situation
friends and family
de
members who are
demander à
concerned
la
about a
Cour de
situation
confisquer
to
immédiatement
apply to the court
les
to
armes à feu
immediately
des
confiscate
individus violents
firearms
et à risque
from
et
violent
de
and at-risk
suspendre
individuals
leur permis
and to
d'acquisition.
suspend their firearms
Ces mesures
acquisition
aideront
license.
aussi
These
à
measures
prévenir
will
des cas
also
de
help
suicide.
to prevent cases of
De
suicide.
plus, il faut aussi penser
In
à nos
addition,
jeunes et aux raisons qui font
We
en
also
sorte
need to
qu'une
think
personne
about our
peut
youth
se
and the reasons
retrouver
why
dans la mauvaise
someone
voie.
may end up on the
Comme on
wrong
l'a
path.
annoncé dans l'énoncé économique de l'automne, on va
As we announced
investir
in the fall
250
economic statement,
millions de
we will
dollars sur
invest
5 ans pour soutenir des programmes pour les jeunes
$250
à
million
travers les
over 5
municipalités
years to
et les
support
communautés autochtones.
municipalities
Ces
and Aboriginal
programmes auront,
communities.
entre autres, pour but de
These
combattre
programs will, among other
l'influence
things,
et
aim to
l'emprise des
combat
gangs
the influence
criminalisés dans nos
and
communautés.
control of criminal gangs in our
As part
communities.
of today's new legislation, we will also support municipalities to ban handguns through bylaws restricting their possession, storage, and transportation. We're backing up the cities with serious federal and criminal penalties to enforce these bylaws, including jail time for people who violate these municipal rules. Again, these are the strongest measures to fight gun violence our country has ever seen. Minister Blair has worked tirelessly for years on this issue, not only in government, but as police chief of our biggest city. This new legislation will make a real difference when it comes to keeping Canadians safe. We all know we'll be hearing from the well-funded gun lobby, and we all know there will be plenty of politics. But let's not forget what this is about: saving lives. We're not targeting law-abiding citizens who own guns to go hunting or for sport shooting. The measures we're proposing are concrete and practical, and they have one goal and one goal only: protecting you, your family, and your community. Because the victims are real. The pain of their families is real. I stood alongside mourning families at vigils in Sainte-Foy and on the Danforth. I spoke with Constable Heidi Stevenson's family and the other families after the shooting in Portapique. I remember where I was when I was 17 and heard the news of a massacre at l'École Polytechnique. I've sat down with first responders, doctors, and nurses who see every day the cost of gun violence. In Canada, whether it's at the park, at the mosque, at school, at a sports parade, in a small town, in a big city, or in your own home, no one should ever have to be afraid. No more tragedies. No more wrong place, wrong time. The right place to act is here, and the right time is now.
Welcome back to Policy and Rights. I'm here today with our brand new co-host, Ann Ward. Hi, Ann. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for partnering with me on doing Policy and Rights. I know that you feel that speaking out about what is happening around us is definitely a good thing. And one of the things that's happening right now is, of course, the gun control thing here in Canada is maybe it's going a little bit off the rails and too far. And you have a gun enthusiast with you to speak on that topic. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So my first question is to our gun enthusiasts is what does it take to actually attain a firearm in Canada? What do you have to go through? The steps.
Well, you actually have to go through a pretty extensive process. You have to first take your possession acquisition license course, and you have to get over 80% on the written and on the practical part of the test. And then you have to fill out all the information. You need 2 character witnesses. If you have a spouse or you've lived with a spouse in the last 2 years, they have to also sign that they think you're safe to own a firearm. And then you get a criminal background check. You send it all the way to the government or the chief of firearms officer. And then within 6 months, they send you your license if you pass all of the checks. And that's only for your non-restricted. For your restricted, you have to do the same process, but then even just to purchase a firearm, you need to get it approved by the local RCMP. You need to have your route of taking it home. You need to store it completely separately. You can't bring it anywhere but the firing range and then back home.
Okay, so when you take your firearm or your gun to a practice range, how do you transport that? What are the steps you have to take?
Well, if it's a non-restricted restricted, you have to have it unloaded and out of sight, and it can't leave your possession. It has to be locked, and it has to stay in your possession. If it's a restricted firearm, you need to get an authorization to transport it. So you have to notify the police that you're taking it to the range, what range you're taking it to, the route that you're taking it. Like, you can't stop for coffee or gas or pick up a friend. You can't do anything. You have to go directly to the range. It has to be double locked in a locked, sealed case with the ammunition locked separately, and then you have to take it directly home after.
Okay. So, in your opinion, gun enthusiasts like yourself, it's a hobby. It's just something fun to go shoot at, say, clay targets on a firing range. Is that the same person that would reach for a gun for a mass shooting?
No, absolutely not. Firearms owners are actually, I think it's 3 times less likely to commit crimes than regular citizens, because we have so many hoops to jump through, and the fragility of owning a license is so high. Like, we can lose it at any point. Most firearms, all illegal firearms, are what cause mass shootings. Even the one that happened in Nova Scotia that Trudeau used to make this big order and cancel ban, all of them were obtained by the States. The only Canadian firearm that was used was the one that he took from the police officer.
So none of those guns were registered in Canada?
No, none of them. The guy actually had a firearm prohibition. He wasn't allowed to own or use firearms because of previous offenses.
So even if he would have gotten a hold of a Canadian-owned or Canadian-registered firearm because he had he was prohibited, then it was still an illegal firearm.
Yeah,
because he's prohibited.
He's not allowed to have or use firearms.
Okay. So in your opinion, sweeping up in this whole buyback program isn't going to make our streets any safer from say the gang shootings that happen in here in Surrey, or the mass shooting that happened in Nova Scotia.
No, absolutely not. The buyback and the Order in Council banning all of the firearms it's nothing. It has nothing to do with public safety. Like, they classified these firearms. They made up a word, assault style firearm, which doesn't exist. In part of Bill C-21, the bill that he just proposed, they're trying to create a definition for assault style firearms because it doesn't actually exist, and then they're going to use that to try and ban more firearms. Like the gang shootings, all of that stuff, they're all illegally obtained firearms. We're in the border to the biggest gun store in the world, the border to the U.S., and then Trudeau wants to spend. He's saying it's only going to be a few $100 million to do a buyback, which is just absurd. It's going to be in the billions for the amount of money he has to pay to buy the firearms back. But he's only committing $250 million over the next 5 years to combat illegal gun crime. And then 2 days after proposing the Bill C-21, he proposed Bill C-22, which lowers criminal charges and lowers sentencing for criminals that use illegally obtained firearms in the proceeds of crime. If they get caught with them, if they use them in a robbery, if they discharge them with intent, he's lowering all of those punishments while at the same time punishing law-abiding citizens. Like, it has nothing to do with public safety. And even in the new bill, he's addressing laws that we already had. He's saying that you're not allowed to alter magazines, which is already illegal. You're not allowed to own hand grenades and fully automatic machine guns, which is already illegal, to try and lie to people. He's making it look like those are the changes he's making when those are already laws that exist. And then under the radar, he's making all these changes that directly affect law-abiding citizens. Right.
Because under the current laws, what I would assume to be a assault weapon would be something styled like an M16 or AK-47 or something like that. That's what I would consider to be an assault weapon or assault rifle. and that's already banned, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what he's trying to do. He's using scary terms like assault-style firearms to make people think that what he's banning is military weapons. Like, he's making people think that he's banning fully automatic guns, which he added in the Order in Council. He's adding guns that we're already not allowed to use, so that publicly he can make it look like he's banning all of these scary war guns, whenever in reality those are already illegal. What he's banning is regular guns. I have a gun that's a .22 caliber. It's the smallest caliber you can buy, and it's literally a toy. It's a Plinkster, and in the Plinkster form, which is it looks like a regular semi-automatic rifle, that's still legal. But mine, which is a 715T, it has a plastic shell over it, is now all of a sudden prohibited, but it's the same firearm. The mechanics are exactly the same.
Right.
He's just using the term assault-style weapon or assault-style firearm to make people think that he's banning scary, fully automatic guns that are already illegal. He's playing on the ignorance of Canadians. He knows that most Canadians don't understand the firearms. They don't know what they are. They don't know what the classifications are. They don't know the trouble that we have to go through. And then he's using that to his own political gain. He knows people, if you hear, if we ban machine guns, if we ban assault-style military weapons that are designed to kill the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time, everyone agrees with that. Nobody disagrees with that, but the problem is that's not what he means.
What is the restriction of ammo in a cartridge?
The restriction is 5. We're only allowed 5 bullets in a center-fire rifle. We're only allowed 10 in a handgun. And he's adding to the law. You can't alter a magazine, which is already a law.
Right.
He's saying these are to kill the most amount of people in the smallest amount of time. We can't even have more than 5 rounds in a firearm that we can transport, or 10 in a handgun.
Well, I think even the law enforcement has some sort of restriction on the number of rounds they can have in their weapons, their guns also. It's more than 5. I know that the police are allowed more than 5, but 5 it's like that's not going to be the terms of a mass shooting.
No, not at all. Even like the mass shooting that he keeps referencing, the Polytechnique, that shooting, he keeps saying that the guy was using an assault-style weapon. The gentleman who did that tried to alter his gun to make it a fully automatic and actually ended up breaking it, which made it a single-shot firearm. Like, he didn't even use what Trudeau is claiming.
Okay. So it turned out to be well. If I'm remembering correctly, that the shooting back east, it was the assailant was playing a game of escape and evasion with the police, was he not?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So, in other words, he was playing with I can't think of the name of the video game that would go along with that for people to really understand what I mean by a game of escape and evasion.
It's kind of like Grand Theft Auto, really.
Yeah, something like that. Yes. He's also using the number of deaths there with the guy in Nova Scotia. That a lot of the people that died was because of the arson. The guy was going around burning houses down as well. Mm-hmm. And he's also failing to mention the police officers that accidentally opened fire on a fire hall thinking that the assailant was there whenever he wasn't even there. That I did not know.
Like, what he's doing is just playing on the ignorance of Canadians. He knows that Canadians don't have much knowledge on this topic, but nobody wants gun violence, including gun enthusiasts. Like, I'm the last person that wants a mass shooting to happen, or gang violence, or illegal firearms to be used in murders, because it makes all of us look bad. But he's using the ignorance that people don't actually know the facts about. Like, people don't know what's going on with illegal firearms. All they know is guns, like the violent gun crimes are bad and they need to stop. But the problem is Trudeau's not doing anything to stop them. He's trying to make it look like he's doing something to stop them while punishing people that already follow the law to the letter.
Okay, right. So it's more of a, hey, look at me, I'm doing something great because I'm Prime Minister, and he's only restricting law-abiding citizens.
That's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
Even his subsequent bill, 2 days after he announced the Bill C-21, he announced Bill C-22, which lowers all the punishments. He lowers the punishments for the criminals that are committing these crimes. He lowers the punishment for using illegally obtained firearms in the proceeds of crime. Like, it has absolutely nothing to do with public safety.
Okay.
And he knows this, too. That's why they avoid interviews. That's why Bill Blair kicked the CCFR out whenever they tried to have a town hall with him. They know that they have no facts. Even in the courtroom of the injunction of the OIC, the judge was they were appalled that they didn't even have a definition for what they were trying to ban.
All right. Okay. Do you know where people can actually get the information that so that they can catch up to what you actually know? Is there a website or something people could go to find this information so that they can educate themselves and learn and be able to form a real opinion outside of what's being presented by the Prime Minister?
Yeah, absolutely. If they go to the Canadian Coalition of Firearms Rights website, the CCFR, they're constantly putting out videos and trying to educate people, because that's the biggest thing in the fight for our gun rights is education. If people knew all of this information and knew what we had to, like the restrictions and regulations we had to follow and the process we have to do to get our firearms, they wouldn't be against us. The Liberals are trying to paint gun owners as these crazy, psychotic, doomsday prepper, like, just psychopaths, when that's not the case at all.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope that you will be able to continue legally enjoying your hobby and your sport. It's those sort of things are actually, I would consider, to be part of human rights, to be able to have entertainment as you see it without hurting another person. So thank you for joining
absolutely.
us today. Yeah.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Hi, Premier. To the stats coming out of Vancouver, showing a huge increase in hate crimes against East Asian people in the city. We tweeted about it yesterday. Can you just detail what the province is doing beyond, the anti-racism legislation?
You broke up for quite a bit of that question, but if I'm clear, you asked me about the increase in hate crimes, particularly towards Chinese Canadians, Asian Canadians in the Lower Mainland across BC, and what steps are we taking to address that? Is that correct, Mike? Does that capture what you said?
Yeah, sorry. Can you just explain what you are doing at the provincial level to help police investigate this crime and in terms of reaching out to the community?
Great, thank you. Well, let's start with reaching out to the community first. Of course, this is the celebration of Lunar New Year has been happening over the past number of days. Normally in British Columbia, Lunar New Year celebrations involve hundreds of thousands of people, parades in our major urban centers, celebrations throughout our communities. None of that happened this year, but we did have a new way to connect and a new way to celebrate through our computers, and I conducted several virtual Lunar New Year celebrations with representatives and people from the Chinese community right across British Columbia. In addition to that, of course, we have a COVID recovery task force that includes members from the nonprofit community, particularly Queenie Chu from Success, an outstanding nonprofit in the Lower Mainland that deals with immigrant services. Queenie raised these concerns 12 months ago, and they have continued to persist. We've seen graphic images recently in the United States. In fact, a murder taking place on our television screens an 80-plus-year-old Asian man assaulted by a youth for no reason other than the color of his skin. That's absolutely unacceptable, and it's not just in the United States. The release of the information that you touch upon brings home for all of us in British Columbia that we as individuals and as a community have more work to do to fight racism. We will be bringing forward anti-racism legislation this year. Rachna Singh has been appointed the Parliamentary Secretary to work with the Attorney General on those issues. In addition to that, Mike Farnworth, the Solicitor General, has been reaching out to law enforcement across British Columbia to reinforce the importance of prosecuting hate crimes. We need to make sure that violence against people of color is not just treated as violence, but in fact hate crimes, which carry much stiffer penalties, more difficulty in prosecutions, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't follow through and make sure that people understand in British Columbia, if you're going to turn against people because of the color of your skin, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. That's the message Minister Farnworth is delivering, and I expect law enforcement to follow up on that.
We had John Horgan this past week talking about that we want tougher penalties on those who perpetuate hate.
Yes.
What's your take on everything that he's actually saying?
I didn't actually see what he was saying. Mm-hmm. However, I do believe that tougher laws on hate crimes need to be done. We need to stop the hate that's going on there. However, I also feel that you need to prove that the hate crime because I find nowadays a lot of people are using that term because it's a weak spot, and there's a cry for help out there. However, we do need to get tougher on the hate crimes that are prevalent in our community.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of the things that I think would help our society dispense of hate is if because the provincial and federal governments in Canada also still profile people. They profile you if you have a certain skin tone or a certain texture to your hair or something like that. He must be. They will profile you as you are a potential wrongdoer to begin with.
There's a lot of profiling going on out there right now. It's amongst our police officers. Mm-hmm. It's amongst our citizens. It's amongst our politicians. There's a lot of profiling going on, and it's not black and white. There are people out there who will be, let's say, racist. There are people out there filled with hate and anger, and it's a self-infliction on themselves that they see in themselves that they dislike or that they are envious of. However, to be able to actually fight this, you need to get to the root problem. And making tougher laws is one way to do this, but we're not fixing the root problem of where this comes from and why this is so prevalent nowadays in our society.
Right.
I think we categorize people a lot, and when mainstream media will, like say with COVID, when they started saying that it came from China, which it did, but a lot of people then took it that all Chinese were a threat. Now, why are we, what makes society so afraid of people that we're able to do this and categorize people by something that really it's not what they believe, it's not what they think, it's an influence. Right. So we need to find out why the influence is being put that way.
Yeah. One of the things that I have found, because I have actually been profiled, is that the people who are the powers to be, that they get the rest of the public to say, you don't look like I do. Well, there must be something wrong with you because you don't look like I do. And I think that's one of the attitudes that we need to actually get out of our society, that hey, I'm a human being the same as you're a human being, and we need to respect each other as that.
Oh, I agree 100%. And if you go into a kindergarten classroom and you ask the children what the differences are amongst each other, very seldom will color of skin or shape of eyes be what these children recognize as a difference in each other. It might be that little Jordy is wearing a blue shirt and I'm wearing a pink shirt, and it's a male and female. They don't even say, like, well, he's a boy and I'm a girl. These are brought on and taught by society, at home, by the TV, by throwing and focusing on the differences that we want to escape from focusing on. We're actually bringing it to the attention of people that may otherwise not have noticed those differences, and we could have a better society.
Yeah.
Like when you hear of the shootings, it's never a police officer shot a man. It's always the color of the skin shot another color of the skin. We don't need to point that out. We can see that when we see the news or we hear the story or we see the people. Those are obvious differences. But by pointing it out, that's what we're focusing on, when there's a lot more to the story than just that. And yes, there's a lot of police brutality against certain people. I agree with that. We need to find out why that's happening and stop it, because it's not right. But we need to stop focusing on what we are claiming to not want to focus on.
Well, wouldn't it be a better idea just to focus on, why don't we just lower police violence in general?
Exactly.
Or here's a stretch. Why don't we just lower violence in our human society and be more loving toward each other, right?
Bring back compassion. Bring back the neighborhood. Bring back community.
Yeah.
Bring back actually knowing when your neighbor needs help. We don't do that anymore.
So, okay. So, final thoughts, because we got to wrap the show up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, people need to step away from their phones, away from their TVs, away from their computers, and go outside and live unconnected to social media. Because I think social media, as much as it's been a value to our system, it has also been a poison to our system, and we need to have a balance and get back into nature and get back into, like I said, community living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with that. I think that that instead of passing your kid a tablet with a video game on it, that maybe we should pass our kid a hug and a book, and we all. This is something that used to happen when I was a child. We'd all sit around and read passages from different books to each other.
Yeah.
You know.
Or play games together.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
And children the screen.
Yes, and children were outside in the streets playing. I mean, you never ever hear. Back in our day when you're out in the street playing hockey and all of a sudden you hear that car, everybody backs away. You don't hear that anymore. The streets are silent from the laughter of children, and I think that's where people are forgetting the joy of childhood.
Yeah, I think that our society is missing that. Well, let's thank everybody for joining us today, and please do tune back, everyone, next week when Ann and I, again, we do policy and rights, and we talk about some of the hot spots that are actually happening in our society. And don't be surprised if we actually repeat the topic from a different angle, because it's an ongoing problem in our society. Right?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ann. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
All right. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.